Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Healing PlayHouse, a place where we nurture community, share truth, and discuss all things healing. I am your host, Edwina Nunez from Awaken Your Power. And in this episode, I invited fellow coach Mike James to share his journey in healing from religious trauma. Listen in as Mike shares his definition for what it means to experience religious trauma and how his quest for answers led him to find a more awakened version of himself. I hope that the information that we share resonates with you as you navigate your own healing journey. And without further ado, I welcome you to the Healing PlayHouse. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Healing PlayHouse. And today I am super elated to have my friend and fellow coach, Mike James. I'm trying to use a different word other than excited. I feel like every episode I start with the word excited, but again, I just get extremely elated and excited about having my guests join me. So Mike is a certified ICF certified coach and a motivational speaker, and I will let Mike introduce himself in a couple of minutes. I want him to speak, about who he is and what he does and who he works with. But prior to that, I want to actually share how we know each other. The Healing PlayHouse is all about nurturing community. And for me, Mike is part of that community. And I also like to give credit where credit is due. And Mike actually planted the seed for what became the Healing PlayHouse. So Mike and I met last year. So it was June of 2021. I was going through the certification to become a master life coach. And I was a student, but Mike was there. I guess you were auditing because you were
I was training.
Facilitator.
I was in
you were
training. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You were in training, and we didn't have any one-on-one time. It's a 3 full day training, lots of content, lots of activities. So there really isn't a lot of time to socialize one-on-one. But Mike and I got, I think we were in like small groups together. So we did have that time to get to know each other, just, practicing some coaching sessions. But beyond that was just like the bigger kind of classroom forum. But, Mike, you signed out because there aren't a lot of Black male.
Right.
Yeah. Folks, in those settings. So of course you stood out, and your energy was just very grounding and just, very light. So anyway, the class finished, we connected on Facebook, everyone that kind of goes through the course gets, added to an alumni group, and that's how we connected. And at the time I was having a challenge, which is how do I tell my story? So I went through the first coaching certification in March, and that was my takeaway. Edwina, you have to write your story. You have to write your bio, because if you're stepping into the field of coaching, you really need to be your authentic self. Like, how can you help someone else really live in their authenticity if you're not doing it yourself? And it's not that I was hesitant to share my story. I could one-on-one in a small settings, but how do you do that in a bigger platform? How do you do it? What do you say? How do you do that in a way that really creates balance and is coming from a place of healing? But for me at the time, I was stuck on it has to be my bio, my coaching bio. So I was just stuck. I could not move forward. I couldn't figure out how to do this. I would go to it, leave it, come back to it. And then 2 months after, about 2-3 months after the class, you reached out to me via Facebook Messenger. And kind of like, hey, Edwina, I remember you from the class, your energy and some of what you said really resonated with me. And again, we didn't have one-on-one time. So for me, it's like, wherever you are, be your true authentic self, because whatever you are, whatever energy you bring into the space, you're going to resonate with someone. You're going to pull in the right people that is really going to nurture your journey. And so Mike reached out to me and said, I have 2 YouTube channels. One is Impactful Conversations and one is Black Business Booming. And I want to see if you're interested in coming on one or both. And you sent me the descriptions for both. And when I saw Impactful Conversations, was like, I kind of chuckled a little bit. I have this park that I go to where I really kind of ground myself and just connect to my higher self and connect to my universe. And I was walking at the park, and it was just like this feeling of like, okay, universe, what I've been kind of, struggling with. And for me, I saw that as the tool and the space for you to be able to step into that and really share your story in a way that is useful and beneficial. So we did Impactful Conversations about middle of September. And that's when the first time I shared part of my journey through betrayal trauma. And if you listen to episode 1, you know, I did it with my therapist where we go a little bit deeper. But that was the first time that I went in and I shared that story and that part of my journey. And for me, it kind of opened up a whole other perspective in how I could do this, because before I was just stuck on writing my bio. And after I did that segment with you, I shared it with a couple of friends and they loved it. They were like, you know what, if you had a YouTube channel, I will listen to it. And,
right. Yeah.
And I never even thought about that. You know, I don't spend a whole lot of time on YouTube, but prior to this, I didn't. But I think it kind of opened up just a different way of thinking about how to, one, share my story, how to create community. I knew that I always wanted to do that, just create, you know, spaces to talk about healing journeys and create resources. So that conversation with you, for me, planted the seed for what became the Healing PlayHouse. Like I said, I like to give credit where credit is due. So definitely wanted to thank you for that, Mike, and extending that invitation to me, because yeah, I think it led me to just stepping further into myself and just starting living just fully authentically. And yeah, wanted to definitely have you on to share your journey. So before we dive in, I want to give Mike an opportunity to introduce himself. You know, what do you do, Mike? Who do you work with? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Look, Edwina, first of all, let me just say that alone, you know, people always look for this thing to feel complete or feel like they're successful or accomplished, right? It's always this question, what is my purpose in all of this? And I tell people, you know, it goes back to what are you passionate about? And I say that my personal life's mission is to share my light, love, and positivity with as many people as I can in the time and space that I have. And what you said was the first step to that. You have to show up as your unapologetic and authentic self, because that's how you resonate with the people that are on that wavelength. And so, like you said, in the class, we didn't have a lot of just one-on-one exchanges, but certain people stand out. You know, since June of last year, when I started my training to where I am now, you know, I'm seeing 25 to 40 different people every time I'm in a class. And so certain people stand out, and it's based off of energy or the language that they're using, the words, right? And so that connection was there. And I saw, you know, we connected, I think, on social media. And I was like, let me reach out, because I just knew that either of my shows on YouTube, you would fit that at what you were working on in your energy. But just for everybody that's watching, again, thank you for having me, Edwina. For everybody that's watching, I'm Coach Mike James. I always just say Coach Mike James because that's where I am. That's what I am everywhere. Social media, LinkedIn, I'm Coach Mike James. So I am a certified life coach, master certified life coach, and also a ACC credentialed coach under the ICF, a speaker, event MC, and master dad joker. I love telling dad jokes. It's my specialty. I love it. And I'm also a facilitator.
You have to not share your best dad joke.
You know what? Best, that's what's so good. It's situational. I don't know if I would have a best dad joke. I'll just say this, that one of the things that I had to get over today, my wife and I, we had a little disagreement. She told me I had to stop impersonating a flamingo. So I had to put my foot down. Anyway, I'm gonna let that one sit for everyone. But you know, so I always tell people that, especially in social media spaces where there's live and streams going on. But I'm also a facilitator for Certified Life Coach Institute. And as we mentioned, last June is where I started that training process to now, you know, once or twice a month, depending, sometimes 3 times a month, I'm taking coaches through their life coaching certifications with the school that I'm a facilitator for. So it's just amazing doing that, because like you said, connections, it's awesome. My 2 specialties or focus areas in coaching for me. When I first got my certification, Edwina, I was like many of the students, right, that comes to the course. I don't want to make it one thing. I want to work with everybody, you know. So even on my website, it was general life coaching. And what I realized is when I make it so general, the person who's looking for me can't find me. That very person who needs what I do. Can I work with anybody? Of course. I love it. I'm up to the challenge, right? But my two major focus areas is transformation coaching and youth coaching. So anyone going through any transition, any change, a lot of what we're talking about today is huge in terms of that transition and transformation, where you're just starting to think about certain things, and maybe you're starting your healing journey, right? And you need someone to help you navigate that process. So that's what I do, as well as the youth. It's transformation in and of itself. We know that our teenagers, especially in today's age,
Yes.
they go through changes every day.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're dealing with the fact that no one hears them because they're comparing to what it was when they were that age. And I realize that more and more every day, the older I get, that, wow, I'm saying the same things my parents said or older adults said. So now I see. That's why I have to go back and help the youth, because I get it. There's a block there. There's a disconnect. And that's what I'm here for. So that's just a little bit about me. I hope I answered it, because I like to talk. I get that word you use. I love it because I get excited too, especially when I can share space with someone as yourself, and talk about what we're going to talk about today, because I think it's so important. And in the last 2.5 years, needed more than ever, the journey of healing. And I just love the fact that your title is the Healing PlayHouse, because I think there could be a level of enjoyment and excitement and fun to the healing journey.
Yes.
People shy away from that, and I want to hide because it's hard, it's tough, yes. But on the other side, and going through that process, I say that one of the most important journeys that every single person should go on and should start, if they haven't already, is the journey of knowing thyself and healing from whatever is going on in your past or present. And when you get to that space where now you're dealing with that, it's so fun. And so I love the Healing PlayHouse. And again, Edwina, I'm just going to say thank you again for having me. I'm excited, super excited.
Thank you so much, Mike. No, that was beautiful. All of it. I mean, I love that you work with youth, to your point. I mean, yeah, not to sound like, well, back in the day, but, I'm an 80s baby. So definitely, before cell phones, before social media.
Right.
And yeah.
We're the best generation. Let's just pause right here. I'm sorry. This ain't got nothing to do with nothing, but let's just pause right here and say that 80s babies, especially the Zennials, as they call it, I think it's like 78 to 85 or 84, the best generation. Oh, wait a minute, Mike. Why? Let me tell you this, because we were here before everything, during everything, and after. And we have the most direct connection to understanding the older generation and the current generations. We are that generation that says, okay, boomers and X, don't be so hard on the millennials and the Z. They have some points here. I think we're that perfect bridge to everything. Like, we understand what a rotary phone is. We understand what it was like before pagers. We understand what it was like when the TV went off at night. We understand all these things. We understand seeing 98 cents a gallon gas. We've been there. And so I think we have let's not even talk about our music evolution. I mean, come on. So I just had to say that, because the argument happens, generation wars, but we're the best. Period.
I agree with you. We understand that. And now we also can find the benefit in our society today, technology, accessibility, and how beneficial that is. So to your point, it is that bridge.
Correct.
So I'm so glad that you're working in that space. And the fact what you said about the healing, I mean, that is why I called it the Healing PlayHouse, because I mean, again, like after we had that conversation, I was listening to a podcast, and I just had this vision of like a playground and watching children kind of like play. And if you ever see a child, like especially, toddlers and those developmental stages, when they go into a playground, like every year you see the growth and development, right? When kids go into a playground, they experience everything: anger, frustration, joy. They invite children they've never even met before. So that idea of using your healing journey as a way to explore all aspects of yourself and the spectrum of emotions and the growth that's within that. Because oftentimes what sparks our healing journey could be something that's really challenging and very painful and very difficult. And we want to get through that as fast as possible, use whatever we can to bypass, which is, might touch on some of the stuff that we're talking today. Spirituality, religion is one of those things that folks use it to bypass and not do that deep level work because it is so hard. But if you lean into those painful moments and those painful emotions, that's when the healing can truly deeply happen, because you have to sit with that pain. You have to sit with that discomfort, because that's where the biggest lessons, really come from. So with that, before we dive into Mike's journey, I like to start these segment by either defining or providing context for what it is that we're going to be talking about today. And the reasons why I do that is because if our audience has never heard the term, I want to be able to provide a definition so they do have a better understanding of when the term comes up or things that we're talking about. And secondly, whenever we invite someone to share their journey, especially when you're talking about healing, it's a vulnerable space that you're creating. So as that person is sharing their vulnerability, it's really creating a space of empathy. And oftentimes, we can we're challenged with that because we're hearing with our own perspective and our own understanding, right? Yeah. When I went through my journey of betrayal trauma, my best friend, who is my a ride or die, we've been best friends for 20 years. When I initially said, I'm experiencing triggers, she couldn't understand that, because for her understanding of triggers was tied to physical violence, to domestic violence, so she's a social worker. So when I used that, she was like, "Babe, but you didn't go through that." So I had to explain to her how betrayal trauma equates to PTSD. And when I experience triggers, this is what it means, and this is how it manifests. And that created this space where when I would say that, she could hear me with empathy. So I like to start with that shared understanding, especially when we're speaking about topics that can be sensitive and tricky to navigate, like religion. So what we're discussing today is your healing journey through religious trauma, which I think anytime you talk about religion can be very, very tricky and can, trigger other people. And oftentimes you don't put those two things together, right? Religion and trauma, because, folks go to religion to heal from trauma, save themselves from challenging situations. So how does religion lead to trauma? So before we dive into your journey, if you can, in Mike's word, describe what that means, religious trauma, or how can religion lead to trauma?
I had to sip some tea because I'm going to spill it. Listen, let me just first say that I'll shade to what you did in setting that up, because I think it's important to where I am on my journey. I can do it now. Was I always here? No, but I think it's important to give that disclaimer. And I'll just say to anybody watching, if religious spirituality, if it's still a triggering topic, or a topic you're not ready to face or open up to something different than your level now of cognitive dissonance, or you're not ready to dive into that, I would say pause this. Like it, add it to your watch later playlist on YouTube, and come back to it, because when you're open to it, it can be a beautiful thing. And so I give this disclaimer out there because people assume that when you talk about religion or the problems that you see with it, that you're automatically anti and against. And I tell people the best way to describe it now, I am sans religion. It doesn't mean I'm anti-religion or religious. It doesn't mean that I hate. No, it's not my place to tell you what's best for you. So if you take religion, think of it as any other thing as well that you may, like you said, escape to for healing from trauma or from anything else. I go back to this. And one of the things that sticks with me from what I learned in religion is that a tree is known by the fruit it bears. And if you're wondering where someone is, check their fruit. How are they? What is their character? What do they do? How do they show up in spaces? And I have to say that, and I'm glad, again, back to the title, the Healing PlayHouse, because I want to make this as enjoyable for people as I go into this detail. So again, that was my disclaimer. So religious trauma, let's go there. First of all, trauma, right? Trauma as defined, it's a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, right? So that's trauma, whether it be physical, mental, social, financial, any of the areas of life. So religious trauma. Now, Edwina, when I sat down and I thought about this, I was like, if this is not in some psychology journal or encyclopedia, it should be. I made this, but I'm like, is this out there somewhere? I need to make sure I'm not, copying somebody's thoughts, because when I sat down and wrote this out, short and sweet definition, I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. So if you're out there and you have your journals of psychology and all of that stuff, and you need someone with alphabet soup behind their name, with education, experience, all of the above to write an article about a definition, let me know. Coach Mike James everywhere. So get in contact with me. But here we are. My definition of religious trauma, and I had to write this down because I was like, I'm using this from henceforth and forevermore. So religious trauma is trauma caused by the negative experience, confusion, or separation from any organized religion. Again, trauma caused by the negative experience, confusion, or separation from any organized religion. And to break the definition down, now that I gave the definition, it is that point where some people, if you are on that journey where you're questioning things, right? And you're starting to wonder, okay, certain things are not lining up. And it just happens. It's just like people equate certain things. They say it's a lifestyle, it's a choice. It's like I didn't choose it. It chose me. It happened one day out of the blue. I don't know how I came across this thing or this story or this testimonial article by someone, but it just happened. So you start to question things. You start to realize, wait a minute, this is not lining up, or maybe I don't believe as I once did. And so what happens, the more you dig, the more you research, the more you study, the more you pray and beg, like, no, this can't be it. All these years I've been believing this certain way. Now you're telling me it's this. The more you research, the further it separates you. And what you realize now, you start to apply what you've known to that point and what you've been taught, that you're evil, that you're backsliding, that you're regressing, that you're going to a dark place. And all along, you're not realizing that you're going to a new light, and it's attracting you to something greater, something bigger. And that part of my journey, getting to that point, that was the tough part. So again, in short, it's that trauma caused by any negative experiences, confusion, or separation from any organized religion.
Thank you for that. And yes, I mean, if that's not out there, you got to copyright that and make sure it gets out, because I think I
need to.
That was just beautifully succinct. And just even how you expanded and defined that, I mean, definitely touched me, because certainly experienced some of that as well. I grew up in a very religious household, and yeah, definitely found my own spirituality, but can definitely resonate with how you describe that. So with that, yeah, let's go into your journey and how that happened for you. I don't know if you want to start like how you were indoctrinated into religion, that you grew up in a religious household, and how that manifested for you, and I guess what happened that made you start questioning things.
Yeah, so another word, right? Another word that people hear where they are, Edwina, and they hear it and it may trigger them. What do people use is indoctrination. So let's talk about that even. Indoctrination, that is just, let me call it what I understand it. Listen, disclaimer, the opinions expressed by Coach Mike is those of himself and not a reflection of Edwina or the Healing PlayHouse and any organization tied to either of the two. So as I understand it, right, indoctrination is the force feeding and enforcement of any particular belief. Right? When I say force feeding, the reason why I say force feeding, because it's not teaching it as, think about, or even education, right? You're forced to learn it the way the teacher teaches it. And that's what that's what the quiz is going to be on, right? And if you don't pass it that way, you don't go to the next level. So let's bring that back to what I say indoctrination is. That force feeding is whoever is teaching you, based off of their experience and their understanding, which is so limited. Oh my God. In this whole expansive universe, whoever is teaching you a certain thing is so limited. And I say force feeding because it's not taught as here's the information, you have options. And when I think about this often, what if when we were 3 or 4 or starting to develop in those first 5 to 7 formative years, what if we were taught every religion, every form of education, every form of understanding of life as it is spiritual, mental, social, physical, and financial. And then at the conclusion of those teaching in the formative years, we say, as you learn and grow and experience life, you have the choice of what route you will follow. Can you imagine how much more collaborative and communicative this world would be if that were the case? Because now there would be no need for me to tell you that I'm right and you're wrong.
Exactly.
But again, goes back to indoctrination. So my journey, right? P&Z Life Coaching, that's my business. And I always give a nod to that because it will forever be a family business, whether I hire family or not. Both my parents are deceased, the late, great, amazing Prince James Jr. and Isola Edmonds James, who was known affectionately by her siblings and close family as Zola. So that's where the P&Z comes from in my business name. It's a nod to my family, a nod to my upbringing. And even for family and close, I'm the youngest of 11. My mom was one of 11. My mom was one of 13. My dad was one of 11 as well, with some half sisters and brothers as well. So large family, that's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
Southern Pentecostal preachers, strict, religious. I joke all the time that my mom and dad, they had one scripture quote in their Bible, and it was be fruitful and multiply, and they obeyed. They obeyed and they multiplied over and over and over. And so my indoctrination into organized religion was just that. Southern Pentecostal, very strict. It's this or nothing. And watch this. Here's the trauma in religion. And for those watching, I want you to really hear what I'm saying and know that it's not an attack. Here's the portion of that. It's the fear around it. That's where the trauma comes in. Because as I said, it was this or nothing. That equates to good, bad, heaven or hell, pass or fail. So now all I know is fear, 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 because I'm living my life in fear. And the question becomes now, am I doing this out of expectancy of the reward or fear of the punishment? Either way, there's an ulterior motive, because I'm not doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
I'm doing it because of something. And so it was just fear, fear, fear. And so that was my experience. And the journey from there, when I started questioning, well into my adulthood, and it was so hard, because you mean to tell me for 28 to 30 years, I believe a certain thing, and now there's something maybe different out there. There's something that I didn't know. There's some things that don't connect as I was taught. Wait a minute. And guess what happened? That's after education. That's after learning to study for myself. I did exactly what they taught me to do, study to show thyself approved. And the more I studied, the more it pushed me away from what I was taught.
How did that affect you? I guess, yeah, it seems like you started questioning when you were 28. How did that perception of, if I don't do the right thing, I'm going to be punished, this, watchful eye of God is watching me. How did that, I guess, influence, your childhood years, your teenage years?
Yeah, honestly, it was not even a thought all the way through college and everything. It wasn't a thought of thinking another way. And in fact, one of the biggest things that hurt me in terms of emotionally was, I thought back to all the conversations that I had. And now I was never as I was raised, I was never the hellfire brimstone type of Christian that would tell people, well, you're going to hell or this and that. I was always loving and open to certain things. But I remember certain friends and certain people connected with me because I was not ashamed, right? I was not ashamed of the gospel. And I would be that person that people would run to. I've always, like we talk about in class, how many people have always been the fixer or the person that people come to. That was me. And so I had no shame in it. My wife, when we were dating and all through that, I was the one saying, hey, we gotta go to church. We gotta do this and that. So at 28, some things started clicking for me. And people think, there's this term that comes about called church hurt. No, let's call it what it is. It's called religious trauma. Because they try to negate that. They say, oh, church hurt. Some people are hurt. And it's not, you can't look at man, you got to look at God. No, because things happen, and things happen to people under the guise of religion, under the guise of religious authority. But then when you stand up against it, it's, oh, you're looking at the wrong person. You're looking at the man or the woman. You should be looking at God. No, in any other situation does this work. If it happens in a corporation, you're fired. If it happens in any other aspect, a company, anything, but when it's religion, we have this backing where we can stay in that mode. So 28, some things started happening for me. And at that time, I was in leadership. I was in leadership in the church. I was volunteering, doing everything. So no, here it is. A lot of religious people where you probably wasn't doing what you needed to do, or you were just sitting on the pew. You weren't involved. So, God couldn't speak to you and all of this. Amen. I was involved. I was a leader. I was a leader in the church, went through leadership training. My official title was deacon. So I was in leadership at 30. World flipped upside down because now some of those questions started blaring louder. And it was because around this time, this was around the time of 2014, 2015, where a lot of things were happening in the Black community. Police violence, a lot of things were at an all-time high. And I started to look back and say, where are the people who are my spiritual fathers and mothers speaking out against this? Oh, wait, it doesn't fit into the Old or New Testament to speak out against this, especially in terms of to keep the status, to keep people from being upset, because we have to feel good. We have to, we have to get a word and a revelation, but we can't talk about the things that's harming the very communities that you serve. And I started questioning a lot of different things. And so that's what happened for me. So it was years for me in the making, Edwina. It wasn't one of those things where I can't even say, a lot of people say when I was 7 and I was 5, I would always question certain things and this. No, man, I was grown and married. I wasn't thinking about questioning religion.
I totally resonate and yeah, I can see that. Like I was Pentecostal, in elementary school, so as a child, and then Baptist, and then Baptist, through my teenage years. And again, I wasn't questioning. This is just what I knew. And for me, things like I started to shift when I went to college. And all of a sudden, I wasn't like in my household. I wasn't going to church 3 or 4 times a week. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, that's not the voice of God. Like I'm doing these things because of I don't want to be perceived a particular kind of way by the people. You mean to
tell me I won't go to hell if I miss a Sunday service? Whoa.
So it wasn't until I had some distance that I can then actually tune into my own voice and start to find my own identity. Because even there's certain things that I didn't experience as an adolescent because certain things were deemed unholy. Like I don't even remember going to a movie theater because that was unholy, or listening to secular music, or doing things that a regular teenager would do as a way to develop and get to know themselves and create.
Are we related?
Make mistakes.
Are we related? I'm like,
but I feel like that is the experience of a lot of folks that grew up in church.
It is. It really is. I had 2 older siblings who were able to run track and field. And that was questionable. But all my brothers, for the most part, wanted to do some sport. Weren't allowed. Like you said, movies, my sisters, dresses and all this, and you can't do this. Sports, organized sports, you couldn't do anything because it's worldly, And that caused a trauma that I know if any of my siblings see this, I know some of them haven't dealt with yet. And I'm here to say that it's okay. It's okay because I dealt with it. But guess what? My role was a little different. My mom transitioned on when I was 10. So by the time I got to high school, it was over and over and over myself, my older siblings. I was the first son, 6 boys. I was the first that was allowed to play football. So I did football and track and field and weight powerlifting and all of this, but I was the first to be able to experience that. And I look back at it now, it taught me so many life lessons just doing organized sports. And so when you said, I was like, oh my God, are we related? But yeah, everything was evil. And what kind of life is that?
What kind of life 16.
Is that? I'm sick, man. I just want to live.
Exactly. You just want to experience life and you just want to live, and you don't realize that you're living a very dimmed version of yourself. So for you, it came at 28, you were a leader at the church. How did you, I guess, once that voice started to become louder and you started to question things more and more, how did that transition happen for you?
Yeah. So the first thing for me is I did what I knew to do. I prayed harder. I studied harder. I started buying concordances and other versions and big Bibles and religious books. And guess what else I started doing, Edwina? And boldly, I can say this now, because at the time it was always when you also go through that transition and you deal with that trauma, the other part of that trauma is you can't talk to anyone about it. Because now if you do, oh, you're evil. You need to pray, fast more. Everybody needs to, whatever. You need to go to the altar and do this and that. And why would I want to do that when you're going to tell all my business and preach about me? Anyway, another story. But I did the approach that I knew was the right thing to do at the time. I prayed harder. I studied more. I changed my diet, everything. I changed everything. And guess what I started doing? I started going to other leaders. And this is what I realized, and this took me further into it. I realized that most did not have the answers. And it was the same questions that they had, but they had to go back to the script, because this will affect my livelihood or everything that I know now. And then what is real? That's part of that trauma. You have to stay doing what you're doing, because I know nothing else. And life is not life without that. And when we went to church Sunday to Sunday, so if I miss a Sunday, hell, first class ticket, I'm purchasing it at that point. That's just how I was taught.
Yeah.
This is when my eyes really got open. When I went to leaders that really stand in authority. And I say this boldly now because I couldn't always share this. At the time, my pastor, we had a conversation. This is another blessing about my experience. My wife and I really started that journey at the same time, because so many relationships split because of that. Someone starts a journey, but another one is still in it, right? And not dealing with it yet. And that's hard. That is a hard thing to do. I've seen it so many times. And when I talked to, at the time, my pastor, and echoed, confirmed all the questions and the thoughts and the things that we had. And they looked us in our eyes and said that if I teach that, they would leave. And it's like, wait, what? So this is the same person, the leader, that said that, hey, everybody here is going to know, have the knowledge and be leaders and all of this, and nobody here is going to go to hell. And if they do, they'll know why, because of the teaching and the leadership, which to this day, it was great, because it helped me even more. Because how I grew up, I felt like growing up in my dad's church, I didn't get as much knowledge to navigate Christianity. At the church I was a part of as an adult, in my adult life, the last church I attended, it was the teaching and navigating and the learning and the education in it that helped me even more. And I credit it to this day. I still credit it to that. It really taught me how to read and study for myself. And it taught me to be a steward. And the more I became a steward, the more I graduated and elevated to a level where it no longer served me. And so it was hard. It really was hard. But the more I prayed, the more I begged, the more I asked, the more download I got from the universe, from God, whatever you want to call it, ancestors. The more I begged and said, this can't be right. And the more I pushed away, the more it came, the harder it came to me. And it got to a place where it was always downloads. I was at a place, Edwina, where I could sit in a crowded room of hundreds of people and be in meditation and block out everything, because that's how deep and hard I was searching. I would walk, at the time we had a dog, and I would walk my dog 3 times a day, and that was my time. It's about a 30-minute around the whole neighborhood. I would pray, meditate, ask for leading, guidance. This is the prayer my mom taught me. Help me to get knowledge and understanding. And in all my knowledge, help me to get an understanding. And if you find anything that's not like you or that I shouldn't be having, remove it. And the more I said that prayer, Edwina, the more things open up to me. And I said, because I'm still honoring my mother and father and the prayer that they taught me, I know I'm in the right space, because I'm not driving away my wife, my family, or anybody. And what happened is, I won't even say I'm the black sheep of my family, because my family loves me. I'm just, look, you can brag on yourself sometimes. That's a healthy thing to do. I'm dope. My family loves me, so I'm not the black sheep, but I will say this. My family don't talk to me about religion. They simply don't. They simply don't. I had one sibling that asked me, do we still attend church? I said, no, and we're not looking. And that was it. And that family member is a pastor, a sibling. So that was it. And I know for me, I know they don't talk to me. And a lot of people don't talk to me about it because they're not ready to have that conversation, or they fear that it will turn sour. And for me, I'm like, no, it's a loving conversation. It's like this, like what we're sharing. It's a beautiful thing when you get to that place in your journey, but I had to go through the process.
Yes, and I oftentimes feel like it's a projection, right? When someone is so cannot have that conversation because they fear that it's going to turn sour, it's more for themselves. Because what I often find is when you have conversations like that, if I have a different understanding, like saying maybe within the last 2 years, I started using the universe rather than the word God, because that resonates more with me. People think, well, you don't believe in God? Of course I believe in God. But for me, like the word God, for me, it feels very restrictive. It feels very man-made. But for me, the universe is beautiful, it's expansive, it's magical, it's uncharted. It's what resonates with me. And for me, it's like, that is the manifestation of who God is to me. But even that, like folks, when you have conversations of resonating with spirituality differently, it's almost as if you're negating their beliefs. It's almost like they're so protective of their relationship with religion that they have to push yours away. Like, I have conversations with my mom all the time. And, I'm really drawn to like shamanic teachings because I'm so rooted and grounded in nature. And I went to a retreat last year, and my mom, we were texting. I'm like, Mommy, I just went to a shamanic sweat lodge and it was a ceremony and it was beautiful. She didn't even reply. She sent me 2 YouTube videos of a Jesus testimony.
Yes. Oh man, that's it. That's really it. It's like you said, it's projection though. Yeah. And you know what? I was talking about the journey, right? This is a beautiful thing. You get to a place on your journey, in your journey of self-discovery and healing, where I think we should all strive to get to. Because I also understand it like this. Do I have the belief that religion is wrong? No, I'm not all against it totally, right? If you are going to be a part of religion, but at least know the history, the etymology of it, and how to use it as a tool. Like I say, look, the Bible, if this is my tablet, but if this was a Bible, I say that the Bible is an amazing book. It's a best-selling book of all time. It's an amazing book. But you know what? There are a lot of amazing books. And that's another one in my library. Can I go in there and see some stuff but it's just the idea of negating anything outside of your little world.
Yes.
Edwina, there's a pastor that I used to follow heavily. And man, I was like, that's my pastor. That's what I would say. But his name is Ray Hagins. And he would start all his sermons. I'm going to really botch this, but he would start all his sermons holding up a circle. And he would get his congregation to repeat after him. And it was all that I know, that I think I know, lies in this circle. And there is a vast world of understanding and knowledge outside of this circle. And so when you think about that, it brings you back to a place of being humble and humility, of knowing that, wow, even what I think I know is really what I believe that I know. And that's very limited to all of the millions of years of study in the universe, God, ancestors, whatever you call it. There's so much outside of that. And so this is my issue, is when, I don't care what you are, whether you're any religion or atheist, or it's when you force and subjugate anyone else that don't believe as you do. That's my problem. And I used to do this all the time on Facebook. People say, Mike, you always attack Christianity. I say, no, stop. I don't attack Christianity. I talk about Christianity the most because I have the most experience with Christianity. When I went on my journey, Edwina, I studied all religions, especially the Abrahamic religions. I studied them in detail and did a lot of study and praying about like, oh my God, what am I learning? But how does it look for me to tell you about another life coaching school when I work for one? It doesn't make sense. So I say I talk about it the most because that's my experience of 30 plus years. So I can relate to it because I grew up in it. That's my language. What do I look like telling somebody about French? Hey, oh, you said that sentence wrong. Wait a minute. You don't even. So that was my thing. And so, yeah, that's how I feel. You get to a place where it doesn't matter. I think it's when you get to that place where it doesn't matter and you don't care what someone believes, I can still love them anyway. I can still communicate with them anyway. I can still help them and partner with them on things if it's going to be for the betterment of all. When you get to that place, that's beautiful. And what if the world was like that, Edwina? Oh my God, we wouldn't be dealing with some of the very things we're dealing with today.
And it's not even so much to not care, but it's to hold that space that both things can exist and to actually treat it with curiosity. Like, what is it that you follow? What does that mean to you? How does it influence your life? Yeah. So as you were making that transition, you says like you still have a really great relationship with your family. I guess what challenges did you experience making that transition? Because it's not easy to make such a transition, you know, if that's all you know, like your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just what happens is the people around you. I don't know what it is about me, Edwina. I can't put a word on it. My father always told me I was younger and my dad used to ask me advice about the church and different decisions, big decisions. And, you know, I was 10, 11, 12, especially middle school, high school. And I would wonder, like, I'm the youngest. Why is he asking me? I had this conversation. I'm so blessed that I did. My father transitioned on a year after I graduated high school, or actually months later, the summer after I graduated, I said high school, college. So one time I was at home visiting from college and we had this conversation and he had this rocking chair he would always sit in, which I own now, which I'm so excited about because I got one of the family heirlooms and I'm the baby. So he would sit there. I was sitting on the couch and I said, Dad, why did you growing up, why did you always ask me questions and stuff about things, you know, all the brothers in the church and siblings and family and my older siblings? He said, because you were always, he called me baby. He said, baby, because you were always wiser beyond your years. And you always looked at things from a neutral position. I was So I will say this. I think with my family, one of the biggest challenges early on is the internal questioning that they have. I was a church musician. I played the drums and the keys. I would go home every weekend to play for my home church and all that from college, 2.5-hour drive every weekend. And so as family started to notice that I wasn't talking about church and stuff when I was coming home to visit and all of that, it was like, I think it was the internal questions. And I went hard because I was in that combative mode at first on my journey at Edwina, where I wanted to combat and debate, right? I wanted to tell you why this is some bull, and I wanted to flip the tables just because that's where I was, because it was a state of disappointment and anger, right? It was a state of disappointment and anger that this is part of that journey. I did a video a long time ago on Facebook about the stages of enlightenment on that journey. And one of those is anger, where you feel you've been lied to, that you've been kept, some big secret has been kept from you. And so I would talk about that. And I did have a family member one time that told me I was evil and this and that, and I know this and blah, 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 and didn't talk to me and we never really had closure to it. But this is one thing that I can do well. If you act like something doesn't happen, I can win an Academy Award acting like something doesn't happen. Why? Because you had the fallout with me. I didn't with you, so I can still love you when I see you. If you don't want to talk about it, I don't either. Cool. So it just became one of those things where it became an understanding more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we know what Mike is, you know, maybe he a heathen or whatever, but we ain't gonna talk about it because he's still nice and friendly. He ain't evil. Because I think that's the biggest thing. I would always say
Yes,
that a tree is known by the fruit it bears. Is this
exactly.
person now all of a sudden a criminal? Are they attitudinal? Are they negative? Check the fruit. Check the fruit. And I will tell you that the love I have for people, of all people, has never been as heightened as it was in the first 30 years of my life compared
Mm.
to the last, the last 5 to 8 years of my life. So different night and day, because there was a point where I couldn't easily communicate with you if you believed a certain thing, if you had a certain, as they call it, lifestyle. you know I wasn't always there. Now let's break bread. I am good. I enjoy the opportunity. And Edwina, I'm going to tell you, I truly believe that things are always happening as they should, because I would not be able to do what I do now had I not went on the journey. I would be too close-minded. I would not be able to sit in the space where I'm teaching 25 to 40 people month in, month out from all around the world, different backgrounds and religions and all this, and not have a place of judgment or a place of, well, I'm going to avoid the conversation with this person because they believe a certain way. So honestly, the transition, it was like, for me, I got to the point where I felt like what was on the other side was better than what was in the past.
Mm.
And when I got to that point, it was a beautiful thing. And now I'm thankful. I'm grateful for it. And I'm always here. I say, I don't even talk about it on social media. Most people may see this and say, oh man, Mike, I didn't know you felt that. I didn't know you thought like that. No, because guess what? When you're ready, it's African proverb, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready to go on that journey, when you're ready to have that conversation, it will happen for you. So my family, to all of my family, anyone connected with me, if they want to have the conversation, guess what? I'm open and ready, but I'm not going to force it, because how would I be? How hypocritical and what's the word I'm looking for? Mainly hypocritical. How much of a hypocrite would I be if I walk away from something and turn and do the same thing? And that's why I stopped having the arguments on social media and reaching out for debate and all of this stuff. Why should I now force what I believe now on you, wherever you are? Guess what? It's beautiful to me. If you want to have the discussion, great. But if not, that's okay too. And it goes back to, I see you, I honor you, I'm good.
Yes, thank you. No, that was beautiful. Yeah, and like you said, those are stages that you had to go through. You had to work through that anger, that disappointment. And then to get to the space where Mike, the being who Mike is a bigger testimony than what you can, relate with your words or anything of that nature. So just you, by the essence of how you're living your life and how you are bringing your gifts to the world and helping others and just helping to, just enlighten the world. That is your testimony. So,
Oh,
yeah.
no doubt. Indeed.
Yeah. So how do you say you no longer go to church. How do you feed your spirituality, your connection to God? Like, how do you nourish that part of yourself now?
Yeah, I think the biggest part for me was the beginning of 2016 to 2017. And at that point, at one point I was, full on vegan, and, even to this day, meditation and certain things that I thought was like, oh, you shouldn't do. Oh my goodness. But meditating, journaling, all of that. You talked about nature. One of the things that I have to check myself, and it's been too long. I just did it the other day. If it's been too long where I do it, I have to. I walk in the neighborhood, and there's a place in my neighborhood, there's a little pond with a fountain, and I'll go there and just sit. So grounding, just to walk outside and be grounded in nature. That's one of the best things I will say for anybody, is connected with nature, because it's the source. And so whether you believe in God, whatever it is, the universe, that's the source right there, is nature. It's almost like in your house, in your home, whatever, those walls, these four walls, it's almost like that block, that connection, right? We have the ceiling, the walls, the windows. We can let some things in and out. We can go in and out. But to really get that connection to the outside world, to the universe, is getting out in nature. So for me, it's more so about checking in, with myself constantly.
Mm.
The conversations that my wife and I have, we talk about anything, and we talk about anything and everything. And I think one of the important things is, I say the journey of self-discovery, because you got to get to the point where you hear yourself, you hear your heart, what your heart needs. And you notice those times when it's like, okay, Mike, you got to get back on it. You got to get back to your workout routine. Okay, Mike, you got to get back to certain things, more water, whatever it is, sunlight, get out in nature more. You got to do these things. That's my routine now. Staying connected to that spirituality, and that spirituality in the source is actually talking to it, connecting, asking yourself, what do I need? A lot of people will not sit down with themselves and say, what do I need? Mike, what does your soul need? Hug yourself, embrace yourself when you say it, and wait. And guess what? Here's the beautiful thing for my religious people. It's the same thing they tell you. Go in your closet, right? When you pray, you ask God and wait. It's the same thing. You're doing the same steps. That energy, that INNERG, that inner God, connect with it. Connect with your energy and see what it needs. And now when you ask for that guidance of what you need, wait, see what it is, because that's how it works. The universe will align to give you what you want, will, and work for. Want it, will it, work for it, see what you need, and then go after it. That's my everyday. That's how I approach it.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that resonates so much. And yeah, I want to say that is exactly where I'm at as well. Like, I talk to Edwina all of the time. And it's almost like I had to find the divine within myself, like you say, when you go to church, you hear that God created you in his own image. Well, that means that I am also holy and I am also divine, because if I am created in his image, then that divinity and that spirit lives within me. So it's like going within yourself and really holding yourself in that same sacred holiness that you hold, God in the universe. So yeah, I mean, that was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and that's the thing, just that was one of the early things too. It's like, okay, we're created in the image of God, yet we're told that we're born a sinner and wretched and all. And I have to laugh now when I look back at it, because when I was on the stage, and every now and then, I talk differently when it's just my wife and I, but I'll say, that is the dumbest crock of I ever heard in my life.
It's so contradictory. Yes.
To say that I think that babies are the closest and most direct connection to the source than anything else in the world. Because when they come out newness, they don't have the indoctrination, the trauma, all the things of this world that nasty them up, that gets them in more, all this thing. That is the purest form of any human being on this earth, a brand new born baby. And as now you go on and you get all this organized religion, education, indoctrination, politics, all this stuff, you get further and further and further from the source. But yet we say that we're born in need of a savior. Saved from what? What are you being saved from? All the things that you will go through, and the lies that you will be told, and the indoctrination and the trauma and the this and the abuse and all this. How is that possible when we are created in the image of God? But as babies, and so that right there was the first thing I was like, no. And I will argue it. No, I won't argue, because it's a waste of time. But I will stand on that to anyone. I don't care if it's the highest ranked religious person in the world. I will tell them to their face, I think that is stupid if you tell a baby, a child, that they are 3, 4, 5 before they have any understanding of what a God being is in the first place. And you tell them that they're in need of a savior, or they're destined to an eternal place of suffering. How is that? How is that? It doesn't make sense. So yeah.
No, yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, that's what I said. I'm so glad that you work with youth. I do have 2 small children, and yeah, the more that I can just nurture that wholeness that they come into this earth with, the better they'll be for it. I know we're going over an hour. So if you had to leave the audience with someone who is finding themselves having those questions, or wanting to make any transitions, or wanting to connect, with their connection to the creator in a different way, like, what would you say, where should they start? Not should, but how would you recommend they start? What kind of tools can they use?
Yeah, so honestly, I would say, just like I approach with coaching and how I share on a lot of my YouTube videos, have that self session, right? Have that self session. That's a session with yourself where you sit down. For anyone who's on that journey or think they're starting that journey, it's like, okay, Mike, Edwina, I see what you mean. I'm starting to question certain things and nobody can talk. I can't go here. I'm feeling lost. And that can cause a state of anxiety, depression, where we're under pressure. And also, if not addressed and not dealt with, can cause a state of disease. So important, that self session. Sit down with yourself, just take a moment, whether it's 5, 10, 15 minutes, have a self session, write on a piece of paper, who, what, when, where, why, how. Who, what, when, where, why, how, and answer all of them. Who is always going to be you. What is going on? What am I feeling? What am I dealing with? What's this thing that I'm feeling, and the questions that I have, and all of this. The when did this start? When do I want this change? How long has it been happening? When do I want this change? The where is it showing up most? Where do I feel this thing, this anxiety, this frustration? What's my environment when I feel this thing happening and going on? Go through all that. The why. Why is it important to you? Why is it important that I get these answers? Why am I feeling this way now? And then the how. How do you see yourself going through that? So go with what you know at this point. As I said, with my thing, I did what I know. Mm-hmm. And I know how my parents taught me, when you're dealing with something, what do? You pray. You study more. So I did that. And as I did that and opened myself up, this is the thing I will say, and this is the biggest thing that I'm so thankful for. I was open to the download. A lot of times we say, God, show me the way, do this, and we don't open ourselves up to receive that answer.
Yes.
So what if the answer is something that you're not ready for, something you don't want to do? Then you have the responsibility, you have the ability to respond. So I'll say, do that self session, figure out what it is, and just know this, that you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not the first person to go on that journey. You definitely won't be the last. And connect with like-minded individuals. Find your community. Anyone seeing this, save this, email it to yourself, and come back to it from time to time and see what it is. And so all the books and all these things that I came across, Edwina, I would not be honoring each person in your audience that will see this, that may be starting, if I tell them what I did, because I would be assuming that it's going to work for them. And we have a totally different life, totally different environment, role players. Maybe they have a spouse, maybe not, maybe there's children, different work. So I will say this, start where you are. And my 4Ks that I always share with everyone at the end of all my videos, keep going, keep grinding, keep showing, keep shining. Every phase of that, keep digging, keep asking yourself for the solution, and think on the positive. Put your mindset on the positive, because what you focus on, you will get more of. What you focus on, you will get more of. So focus on the positive and attract more of that, and walk toward the light. Look, the last thing is I've been saying since high school, life is like Nike, just do it. Stop delaying the journey. You know some things are not right, and you're asking yourself, oh my God, well, Mike, you don't understand because family, this and that. I do. I've been there. Edwina is the Healing PlayHouse. This whole thing is letting you know that there are other people who's been on that journey of healing that could be so tough, as we both said, but can be a beautiful thing. So keep going.
Thank you, Mike. Spoken like a true coach. And I love how you said that, what worked for you may not necessarily work for someone else. And the first step is that level of self-awareness, because before you take any action in any direction, is raising that self-awareness. Where are you? What's coming up for you? What's going on for you? Why is this important for you? And like you said, the Playhouse is really here to just raise that awareness that is different ways of doing things. There's different paths that you can take, and there's community out there to nurture you and help you do that. But there's not one way of taking your healing journey. So thank you so much, Mike. And where can our audience find you?
I'm Coach Mike James everywhere. My LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. My business page, even if you facebook.com/Coach Mike James. The only place that's different, which is okay because I'm not there as much, is Twitter, and it's by Coach Mike, BY Coach Mike. But yeah, Coach Mike James. And anyone that has more questions, right, and they see this and say, well, yeah, Mike, I would be interested in knowing more about whatever. I'm open. I'm open book, because I realized that at that point in my journey, I had people that were at the same point, but I do know how lonely it can be in social media spaces, family, all of that. And you know, that term black sheep comes up, where it's amazing that a lot of times the black sheep shines the brightest. So if you feel that way, I welcome people to reach out to me, even if it's just exchanging and asking some questions and connecting with me. I welcome that. So yeah, Coach Mike James, everywhere, including my YouTube channel, Coach Mike James. So Edwina, thank you so much for this. I knew this would be good, and I told you at the beginning, just reel me in, because I love to talk, and especially about things like this, because it doesn't happen enough and often. And so thank you for this, and just for creating and holding this space. And to all the past guests and future guests, I'm so excited to just be able to share this space with you.
Thank you, Mike. And I'll definitely drop your contact info in the YouTube channel. It's been a pleasure having you here, sharing your journey with us. Such an important topic. So thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have you back in the future. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Healing PlayHouse. I hope that Mike's story and takeaways resonated with you. As Mike beautifully outlined, the journey to healing and self-discovery starts with asking yourself those important reflective questions. As humans, we are curious beings by nature. It is what has led us to explore, invent, and evolve. Religion is an important aspect of our human evolution and society. And as Mike highlighted, when used to strike fear and punishment, it can be detrimental to our own growth and well-being. We invite you to be curious, to ask questions, and to find community that supports your journey, whatever that may look like for you. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and share for Healing Happens in Community. I hope you tune in to the next episode. And until then, keep healing. Much love, Edwina.